My name is Jack Boland, and I'm an alcoholic, a recovering alcoholic. That's the that's the best kind. You show me an alcoholic, and I will show you a frightened person. I'll show you a terrified person. Every time. You show me an alcoholic, and I'll show you an agoraphobic. And I don't believe there's ever been an exception to that fact. As a matter of fact, you show me a person who is experiencing any addiction, and I'll show you a frightened person bordering on agoraphobia. And let me take it a step further. Everybody is addicted to something. So that includes us all, doesn't it? You don't think it does? I would like to ask those of you who have consciously been controlled, if only in a moment, by fear in the last 24 hours, some event, some circumstance, to please stand. You may be seated. Fear is indigenous to the human condition. And while fear, I believe that fear is the major problem that the human race is experiencing. If we could take away fear, if fear could be wiped away across the board in human consciousness, the world would change. I'm talking about man's inhumanity to man would change overnight. You've heard it said that love makes the world go around. It could, and it would, if fear did not stop it. And I think I can prove at that point to you that how many times in your life, how often in your life, and how many experiences, how many events, how many times have you made a commitment to go into some new relationship, some new important career change? How many times have you moved from one place in life, one city, one state to another, filled with excitement? And your excitement was caused by the fact that you were getting away from the things that you feared. You're getting away from your comfort zones. And by comfort zones, I mean the trap, the boxes that you were locked into. You found yourself, or you find yourself now in your comfort zones, doing the same things the same ways on the same days, and not going beyond those barriers that your mind has set up for you. Are you understanding what I'm saying? Okay. And the idea that I will move some other place, or that a new person, a new relationship will come into my life, or a career change, or just move down the street, or a new apartment across town, fills us with excitement, doesn't it? Joy, anticipation. And you move into that event or that experience, you lean into it and move into it. And how long does it take before fear, apprehension, concern, worry? Because all that worry is fear. Worry is another name that we have given fear. The worry, the negative emotions, those things will pull us right back down again, so that in a very short time, we find ourselves in the same box, just the same size, same shape. And in that box with us are the same people that we were boxed in with before. They may have different names and faces, but they're the same people. Fear keeps our world from really going around. It keeps our lives from becoming what our lives could be. Fear is fear's the great thief that robs us of the excitement, of the joy, of the ability to function, the ability to perform, the ability to achieve the heights, the ability of which we are capable, and the ability to fulfill the dreams and goals and aspirations that live in the heart of each one of us. And fear will kill us. Fear will not only kill us ultimately in the sense of, in extreme cases, causing people to take their own life. But fear will rob us of our lives while we're still alive so that we become a member of that contingent of people that are known as the living dead. You asked, Kathy, that I talk about those things that will set us free from fear, a few basic points that will set us free from fear. In this period of time that you were talking about a few moments ago, when you said that you were on the drive drunk, incapacitated, not yourself, how long did it take you to recognize that you were afraid?
For me to recognize or for you to recognize?
Well, for you to recognize. I was watching you.
It took me a month.
It took you a month to see it, isn't that true? It took you a month to see it, and at the same time, you were regularly coming to meetings of the group called The Joy of Living Free from Fear, which must mean that fear is a chameleon and knows how to hide. It knows how to pretend. It knows how to conceal itself. It knows how to control us without us knowing it. And it does so through an incredible, unbelievable process that exists in the human mind known as denial. Denial. Denial, which is that strange mechanism of the mind that prevents us from seeing what is happening to us. Extreme examples of denial are people like me, alcoholics. Do you know that I was on Skid Row and did not know that I was there? I was there, living a Skid Row experience. Not only did I not know that I was an alcoholic, I could not see, I could not admit, my mind would not permit itself to see what was happening to me. Not only could I not see my alcoholism, I could not see what my alcoholism was causing. I could not see what my fear is causing. And you see, Kathy, your fear kept you from being aware of your own behavior, didn't it? That's what fear does. When we do recognize fear, when in those moments when we become aware of fear, we tend to identify fear as the thing that we think we're afraid of. Fear loves us to have an of. Doesn't it? I am afraid of flying. I'm afraid of whatever. Who has a fear? Who has something that you're afraid of with some regularity? Afraid of elevators. Who said that? Afraid of elevators? Of success? The fear of success, the fear of failure? Same fear. Did you know that? But we'll come back to the of in a moment. What else? Heights? Fear of rejection? Who among us? Oh boy, if that won't control you, nothing will. Watch how many times. What happens to the person who is afraid of rejection? They set themselves up to be rejected, don't they? So that their fear then becomes more exaggerated of rejection, and the more we are rejected, what happens? There's a concomitant or a brother or a sister to fear. Does anybody know what it is? Anger. Show me a fearful person and I'll show you an angry person. True? It's true. I mean, it just works that way. But fear loves for us to have an of. Because as long as fear can keep us focused on something other than itself, we can't recover from it. See, we're not afraid of elevators or of failure or of success or of heights. We're just afraid. Period. We're afraid. And fear does not want you to know that you're afraid. I used to get in fights with people to prove that I was not afraid. I used to go to bars, And I had the kind of personality that I could walk in a bar and a fight would start. I tell you, I could just stand there, order a beer, and a fight would break out. And more often than not, it broke out around me. And later I could say, well, I didn't do anything. I just showed up. Of course I showed up. And that which I greatly feared came upon me. I was so afraid of being afraid that I would do the thing that I was afraid to do. You think I like fighting? This is a minister talking about fighting. You think I was not afraid of fighting? Of course I was afraid. But I was more afraid of being afraid, and so I would fight to prove that I wasn't afraid. Now, if that isn't dumb, you tell me what is. But it's no dumber than something that you did this afternoon. If you can step out of your denial long enough to see how fear has been controlling your life. And I promise you that fear is controlling your life in a major way, in some important area, probably in the most important areas of your life. Fear is controlling you. It is. It is. It's keeping you from demonstrating the incredible potential that exists. Let me come back to the point that I'm making. Fear can exist forever as long as a person lives. If the person does not break through the denial, the person cannot begin to see that fear is there. It's in every one of us. It's a part of our human condition. And it is okay to be afraid. It is okay to see that one is afraid. It's very important in the first stage, the first step, to take the shame out of fear. Therefore, I'm going to ask you, everybody in this room that can admit that you are afraid, really afraid sometimes, stand and turn around and shake the hand of somebody who is standing near to you. Let's take the shame out of it. Now do you see that you're in really good company? And that you have nothing to be ashamed of because it happens to us all. It's a part of what we're here to overcome. We're here to really to discover who we are. And there's a self of us, a more perfect self that we're here to put on, and in order to do this, there's a part of us that must be put off. It must be acknowledged. There's a lower self and a higher self. Those of you who have been, in recent months or years, working with some of the dysfunctional behavior that has developed in you as a result of growing up in your families of origin, and you're familiar with the wounded child in you, you know that there is not only a wounded child in you, but there is a wonder child in you, and that the wounded child is not it's not just important enough to heal the wounded child. Ultimately, that wounded child must be surrendered to the wonder child. And it is the wounded child in us that's afraid. There's a part of us that cannot be afraid. It is not afraid at all. And when we begin to experience, when we come into an awareness of and the ability to function from that more perfect wonder child, that wonder being of us, we discover that we really are created without fear. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite statements in the Bible, and I think I have it quoted here somewhere. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, here it is. From 2 Timothy. And as I read this to you, don't think of it as being religious. Let's don't get religion mixed up with the Bible. It's the greatest book of philosophy that was ever written. And Paul was talking, and he's speaking to to Timothy, and he said, "This being so, I want to remind you to stir into flame the strength and boldness that is in you." To stir into flame the strength and boldness that is in you. Stir it up. There's a boldness in you. What does fear do to the boldness that's in you? Have you ever noticed what it does? It dismantles it. It hides it. It robs you. Have you ever felt really audacious, excited, and delighted, and suddenly you were afraid? And what happened to your audacity? Gone. Zap. Gone, wasn't it? Fear paralyzes. That's why there's a group that meets, more than a group, there are a number of groups that are called Agoraphobics in Motion. And that group, or those groups, began right here in this church, right here on this platform, as a matter of fact, one Thanksgiving Day. And the name Agoraphobics in Motion came out of the realization, out of the awareness that fear, or agoraphobia, and the word agoraphobia merely means fear of the marketplace. Agoraphobia paralyzes us. It immobilizes us. It makes us, it withdraw. It causes us to go into the corner of life. It causes us to withdraw within ourselves. It causes us ultimately to bend over, I'm talking about with fear, and to take a fetal position and to want to go right back into our mother's womb. That's what fear does for us. This being so, I want to remind you to stir into flame the strength and boldness that is in you, that entered into you when I laid my hands upon you and upon your head and blessed you. For the Holy Spirit, God's gift, for the real reality is that in every person on this earth, your basic condition, your spiritual condition, is that you already are whole. And that spirit which you are is not afraid. For the spirit of wholeness, God's gift, does not want you to be afraid of people, but to be wise and strong and to have love and to love them and to enjoy being with them. To love them and to enjoy being with them. Wow. How many things do you not do now because you're not comfortable being with those people? Since this is an honest program and I'm looking over at another Jack Boland, I watched Jay Boland actually dishonor the Boland name at our commitment banquet about 3 weeks ago. And what I mean by that is that everybody was on the dance floor except my grandson. You know why Jay wasn't on the dance floor? Why were you not on the dance floor, Jay? Fear? Now, come up here just a second, Jay. This was not planned. I just happened to look over and see Joe. Here's this mic.
Thanks.
Now, this is a guy. He said, thanks. This is a wonderful opportunity to overcome a whole batch of fear, isn't it? Because stepping on this platform is not... This is a guy that... are you pretty good on the trampoline? Pretty good with sports?
Yes.
Yes. Now, but you sat through a whole dancing evening without dancing. Explain that to me.
Well, I told myself I didn't like the band, is what the reason was.
That's wonderful, isn't it? What does fear cause us to do? If I'm afraid of something, what do I say? I don't like it. How many things are there that you don't like? Can you name something that you don't like? What? You don't like volleyball. What? And you don't like any sports. Public speaking. Let me tell you, that is the fear unto death, public speaking. I remember the first time in my life, it was shortly after I got sober, that I went to a public meeting like this, and there was a speaker on the platform, and I said, no human being will ever get me on a platform speaking publicly. I don't like to speak publicly. The fear of public speaking. But you, so you said that you didn't like it, didn't like the orchestra. If it was a different kind of band, you'd be doing it, right?
Yeah.
Has there been anything else you've been afraid of, Jay?
Too many to name, yeah.
Can you think of anything? Can you think of anything recently that?
Mainly what everyone had said so far as an example, and about 100 more.
I'll tell you something else that you've been afraid of. Jay, his family lives in Florida, and Jay came here to really continue his recovery. He is. Are you?
Alcoholic, cross-addicted alcoholic.
Cross-addicted alcoholic, and so he came up here to recover. And in the process of recovery, opportunities arose for you to return back to be at home for a period of time. You've been delighted about going home, right?
You mean now or before?
Before.
I was before.
What were you, when you went home, you were just overjoyed with the with being there for a period of time.
Before I left, I wanted to go home. When I got there, I wasn't too happy.
Okay, but since you've been here, before you got there, I want to make this point. You were overjoyed about going, but when you got there, you found yourself being drawn back into your old fears, the patterns, the old routine. Is that true?
That's true.
And so, are you going home this Christmas?
No.
No. And it's not out of fear, but it's coming to understand that it's important for every one of us to see the patterns, the negative patterns, and how they develop in our lives so that we can take the necessary positive steps to not put ourselves into a position that will pull us back into the old experiences. Thank you, Jay Boland.
You're welcome.
Give me a hug. For the Holy Spirit, God's gift, does not want you to be afraid of people, but to be wise and strong and to love them and to enjoy being with them. If you will stir up this inner power, you will never be afraid. You will never be afraid. If you will stir up this inner power, you will never be afraid. This statement must mean, I believe it's true. Listen to a different translation of 2 Timothy. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power and love and of self-control, a sound mind. That's your true nature. That's how every one of us is built inside ourselves. We do not have a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power, and by power meaning the ability, the empowerment to do any of the things and to do all of the things that you can possibly imagine yourself doing. You have been given the power to cause or to have every dream that you have ever dreamed come true. That's how much power you have. And the only thing that robs you of your power is fear and anger. Your true nature is that you are fearless. There have been moments in your life when you have experienced being fearless. Now, being fearless does not mean that you'd walk across I-696 here and stand in front of one of those trucks and raise your hand. That would not be very rational. But you would not be afraid. You're not afraid. And the point I'm making is this. It is important to come to believe that fear is not normal, nor is it rational, nor has it been assigned to you. It is not a part of your nature. As long as we think that fear is normal, we will rationalize it, we will justify it, we will embrace it. Until I can see that fear is as self-defacing to me, as self-destructive as taking alcohol or drugs, I will tend to fall back into my fear. I will embrace it. or rather it will embrace me. It will not let me go. I must come to see that fear in any form cannot live in me. It will live in me until I make the commitment to eliminate fear as a part of my life. And so many years ago, I made the commitment to eradicate fear, that the rest of my life would be spent in eradicating fear from my experience, because I could never experience my true identity as long as I believed in and gave fear permission to exist. I hope you heard what I said. Did you hear what I said? So, back to what Kathy was saying. What do I have to do to overcome fear? First of all, I have to see that I'm not supposed to have it. You talk to almost any psychologist except Andrews, who talked here last night, and some of you were here, and they will tell you that fear is natural and normal, and I say to you that it is not so. If you believe it is so, then it becomes your norm. And as long as fear is your norm, you will feel comfortable experiencing normal fears. And normal fears will keep you locked into being a normal person. And normalcy will kill you. There's nothing worse than normalcy, as far as your spirit is concerned. You were never designed to be normal. You weren't. You were designed to be audacious, to be creative, to be unusual, because you have been given a spirit that can empower you to do all things. I must see my fear. But how can I see my fear? Because fear is such a chameleon. It loves to hide. It knows exactly how to keep me from seeing it. And therefore it has an of. And the of is that it wants me to think that it is afraid of something, so that my attention will be focused on the something. Let me tell you something that's happening right now in our society, and you can watch the phenomenon. We are creating a recession. It is not a true recession. It does not exist. 6 months ago, the economist said that we were smooth sailing for the next however many years. But suddenly we are about to experience a recession. And what happened was, and you can hear it, is that the media has picked up on the fact that and is talking about a recession. People are listening. And their fear is causing pictures in their minds. For example, I know you've seen this. Media people with camera, with microphones, are interviewing people on the street. When the gasoline prices went up, for example, and they would stick a microphone in someone's face and say, will you be driving fewer miles now that the price of gasoline has gone up? Well, what's the answer to that if someone sticks a microphone in your face? If you haven't thought about it, well, of course I won't be driving as many miles. Asking fear questions and getting fear answers. This morning on J.P. McCarthy's program, and J.P. happens to be the most optimistic, enthusiastic person in this community, but he was off today, and someone took his place. Now, how would you like to have to do J.P. McCarthy's job on the Today Show? If you were just an ordinary radio person, I expect you would be afraid. And I had the feeling that this person this morning was afraid. So he came on following the footsteps of someone that he did not feel equal to. And if you don't feel equal to the position, you're afraid. And he started talking about fear things. His whole program was about the declining economy. He was talking fear thoughts. Why? Because if you are in the media and you're talking about fear, you will immediately catch the attention of the listening public, because people love to hear about being afraid, because they're afraid. And I tried to call the station to break through, to get a line to say, get that guy off the air. And I couldn't get through because there were so many people calling him to talk about their fears. Fear loves to point away from itself and to point to outer conditions to create something to be afraid of so that everybody can be afraid, and then they can have a legitimate fear of a recession, and that which we greatly fear comes upon us. We're about to experience what we have created in our minds, which did not exist until we created it. And that's the way fear works. Not only in the collective experience, but you will find it working in your own life. And what I'm saying to you is, if you're listening to some commentator, some program, or reading some newspaper that's causing your mind to be afraid, put it down. Don't read it. Don't listen to it. Because it has nothing to do with you except that you assume that it has something to do with you. Fear loves an awe. But fear is fear. It was not John Kennedy who was the first person to say, you have nothing to fear but fear itself. That statement has been repeated throughout in one with different phrases, different wording, for hundreds, even thousands of years. I can say to you, you have nothing to fear but fear, not the awe. You don't have to be afraid of flying. It will be exceedingly difficult for you to ever overcome the fear of flying if you try to overcome the fear of flying. But if you face the fear itself as though all that you have to do is to face the fear, it is the fear. Are you following me? It's not the fear of. Take the of off of it, because of means something away from you. I don't have to be afraid of my fear. I can face my fear, and my fear does not like for me to face it. Does it? If I will face my fear, something wonderful will happen. Something incredible will happen. A dramatic change will happen. It will be a moment in my life that will live with me for a long, long time. Not too many days ago, a friend of mine for many years discovered that the place inside his mouth that had not healed was cancer. And the report came back. What is the four-letter word that accompanies the statement of cancer? Does anybody know what it is? Fear. Fear. You say cancer, and there's fear. Fear of cancer and fear for people, fear for the lives of people who have cancer. Michael Smith has been, for years and years, one of my mastermind partners, been very much involved in what happens around here, been in a 12-step group for a long, long time, and is presently studying in our seminary, seeking to, or planning to become a minister. And suddenly he was riddled with fear. Come up here, Michael. Let's talk about it for a second, for a moment. Tell us what happened when you discovered it.
I had a 3-day panic attack. I've never had a panic attack before. I didn't know what they looked like, what they felt like, or at least I wasn't accustomed to it. And I went into a tailspin like I have never known before. I knew that I was going to die. I knew that it would be an excruciating way to go. I would have rather have taken my life than to go through with it. And my mind went absolutely crazy.
How long ago was this, Michael?
About 3 weeks, Jack.
3 weeks ago. Just 3 weeks ago. So we're talking about a present time experience. We're not talking about ancient history. We're talking about a person that you know who's standing here in front of you who was suddenly aware that he had a a very life-threatening condition, and that the possibility of his death happening as a result of that condition was imminent, was possible, maybe even probable. That's fact, isn't it? You, after the diagnosis and the prognosis, you got on a plane and came back to Detroit. And we met, and I'm his sponsor, incidentally. We met, was it for breakfast that we met? We met for breakfast. And I met at breakfast that morning a zombie, not Michael Smith. I met a zombie. When he said that he was having a panic attack, his mind, his personality, his ability to function was paralyzed. And this is a guy that's been in a 12-step program for how many years?
Actively for 6 years.
For 6 years. And very much involved in the spiritual life. Dedicated to practicing these principles. And a person who has been through a number of crises. So crises has not been new to you, has it? Now, fear loved this. Fear loved the situation because fear was looking at the of which was cancer and death, which was imminent. Now, we're not talking about a little hickey, a little red spot on his arm that the dermatologist burned off. We're talking about, look at this wound right here, from here to here, and an equivalent surgery on the inside of his mouth, of his face. We're talking about something that's rather substantial. And so, fear, what does fear love? What does fear love for us to do with it? It loves to be coddled, loves to be embraced, doesn't it? And it loves to have reason to exist. Well, if you have that kind of a condition, then isn't it natural to be afraid? Wouldn't anybody be afraid? And the answer is, of course, almost everybody in the world would be afraid and would be panic-stricken. That morning at breakfast when we were talking, the first thing, as his sponsor, that I had to do was to get his attention. And that really was not easy to get his attention when someone is locked into the state of mind that you were in. What happened at breakfast, Michael? Do you remember what?
Well, I babbled for a while. My fear didn't want to listen, didn't want to hear, didn't want to buy into what I was being told. And finally, Jack, to use a contemporary expression, got in my face.
I had to use some language.
This close.
At breakfast in a restaurant near here. And I really had to get his attention. And I used a word or two that you have not heard me speak. Because why? Michael had to take charge of his mind. And fear had taken charge of his mind. I can tell you that anytime you're afraid, fear has taken charge of your mind and of your life. Fear is in control. He was in control of his life. Michael had two conditions. And the condition of cancer was not his main problem, although it would have killed him. His fear of cancer, his fear of dying, the panic that he was experiencing was his main problem. Do you believe that? Can you see that? Because there was no hope of his recovery until he could attack or correct or annihilate his fear. He had to get control of his mind back. That fear had to be eliminated. Now let me take time out for a moment. Think of a major area in your life recently or presently which you've been afraid. I'm talking about something that's important. I'm not talking about being afraid when you almost had the accident on the highway today but didn't, and then the event passed. It was gone. I'm talking about the fear of living alone the rest of your life, the fear of economic disaster, the fear of whatever it is. Is there something that you've been afraid of recently? If so, raise your hand about that much. You don't have to do it all the way. Okay? You've got two conditions. And the condition that you're afraid of is not your main problem. It's really not your problem at all. It's an opportunity in disguise. Your real problem is your fear of the problem. Are you following me? You are with me, aren't you? So, which do you solve first, your problem or your fear? You have to face your fear. You have to watch and see what your fear is doing to you, which is something that's very important. I must see my fear not in terms of what I am afraid of, but rather in terms of what fear has caused me to do. And when Michael came back from Kansas City, he was not seeing his reactions. He was seeing the condition. And some of us, especially me who is his sponsor, had to bring to his attention what fear was doing to him so that he could stop looking at his cancer and start looking at himself and almost be appalled at what was happening to him. He had to see his reactions. So take a moment now to look at your fear and see what it has been doing to you. It's caused you to hold back. It's caused you to manifest anger. Were you angry, Michael?
Oh, yes. Definitely angry, Jack.
Angry? Mm-hmm. Why?
Because I was such a wonderful person and life had just slapped me down.
Yes, you had your whole future ahead of you. Isn't that true?
Absolutely.
I mean, here you are at your age going off into ministerial school to come back and save the rest of us. And now you won't have a chance to do it.
And a lot of other mindless fears and anger.
Yes.
It just brought out all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. So your fear was accompanied by anger, wasn't it? But you couldn't see the anger, could you? Can't see the anger until you see the fear. Isn't it amazing how the mind works? So you were able to begin to see what was happening in you as the result of your fear and to face the fear. So then tell us what began to happen.
One of the most positive things that happened was the fact that they couldn't do anything for 10 days. And of course, I wanted immediate results, which also stirred up more anger because I deserved to have it right now.
You wanted a prayer that would all get down on our knees and pray, and your cancer would go away, and you could go back to ministerial school and say, we had a miracle. Is that what you wanted?
Mm-hmm, of course. And so what I had to do for the first time in my life was practice the 12-step program with total earnest, with, as it says in the thing, with abandon, and to every day take an inventory of what was going on in my mind and admit the insanity, the fear, the anger, the negative emotions that came up, because on a daily basis I had something new to deal with. My fear created a different condition every single day for me to deal with. But as long as I could sit down and write about it and practice the 12 steps, for some reason or other, the fear went away, Jack.
Yes. Okay. Something else that we did as we went into practicing the 12 steps, we looked at the worst case scenario. Fear does not want you to see the worst case scenario. And in Michael's case, what's the worst case scenario? We had to look at the fact that you might die. Mm-hmm. We did. I mean, sitting in that restaurant, not very far from here, we said, okay, Michael, you might die, but you're terminal anyhow. Here I'm talking to the guy that might die, and I'm telling him he might die. But if he doesn't die from this, he's going to die of something else. Is anybody here that's not going to die? Raise your hand. I want to see you. And I said to Michael, I sure as hell hope you don't die acting like this. Is that what I said?
That's exactly what you said.
I said, I will not be there to perform your memorial service if you die like this. Conscious shock. I mean, it takes what it takes to get a person's attention.
It was the best thing that could have happened. It really was.
Yes. Worst case scenario. Okay, you got a problem. Those of you who raised your little hands like that. Okay. Let's take a look at your problem that you have now admitted. And the fear, which is the real problem. And fear does not want you to look at the worst case scenario. Right? In your own mind, in your own imagination, look at the worst thing that could possibly happen to you in this situation. What's the worst thing? It probably is not going to kill you. His condition was going to kill him unless he did something about it. But the thing that you're facing probably will not kill you yet. You'll die of something else later. It's not going to kill you, is it? The worst thing that can happen to you is not really all that bad, is it? So he will leave you, or she will, if you fear the loss of a relationship. And if you are fearing the loss of a relationship, it's probably a relationship that you should lose anyhow. I mean, you'll be glad when he or she is gone. And I'm not exactly being facetious about that. So we looked at the worst case scenario. And then we took the steps. The admission of personal powerlessness. Coming to believe that a power greater than Michael's self could restore him. That it was God's responsibility to restore him. It was his responsibility to be powerless. That it was his responsibility to take charge of his fear. Because God has said, I did not give you a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power and of love and of a sound mind. And love means a spirit of joy to be experienced in the midst of the situation. That he had to begin to enjoy it at that moment sitting in the restaurant. To enjoy having cancer? Why not? Why not? Is that unreasonable? What is the... If you wish to stop being afraid, there's only one emotion that you can put on that will permit you to not be afraid. You know what it is? Joy, not love. Because if that scripture was written correctly, it would say joy. To enjoy the experience. Now let's back to those of you who raise your little hands. Okay. The thing that you're going through, let's make the decision to enjoy it. That's repugnant, I know. But decide to enjoy it right now. Will you decide to enjoy it? Now, your fear does not want you to enjoy it, because if you start enjoying it, your fear will die. You cannot be joyful and afraid in the same moment. It is absolutely impossible. No human being has ever been able to do it. You cannot enjoy something and be afraid of it. It's impossible. So which do you choose? You have the power of choice. So where you have been afraid, decide to enjoy it. Did you decide to enjoy?
I not only decided to enjoy it, I did enjoy it.
He did enjoy it. How many of you talked to Michael, knew Michael, walked with Michael through this experience? Stand up, those of you. Did he enjoy it? Did he go to the hospital and enjoy it? Did the doctors and the nurses see him enjoy it? What happened in the hospital with your surgery?
Well, just a couple things beforehand. I went in for the pre-operative physical, and guess what? One of our congregation members was there putting electrical cables. He was actually in the room with me when I went through the physical.
When you went through the physical?
Mm-hmm. And I enjoyed going through the physical. But what I'm trying to say to you is when I changed my mind about the experience, God provided for me experiences that took me by the hand and comforted me every step of the way.
What?
And that was a miracle. When I saw, the fellow's name is John Urban, and I think his wife Pat is here tonight. When I saw John in there, I almost came unglued, because it was a message from my higher power saying, no matter where you go, I'm going to be there with you. And that was the beginning of what you're talking about, because the hospital experience, I went in for the operation, I had some friends with me. They took me to the operating room by myself. I had an hour extension on my waiting period before I could be operated on, and I was quite conscious. I had no fear. And that was the most amazing thing in the world, because the work that I had done, coupled with the support that I had here, somehow erased the fear. And I went to the operating room, and I remember kidding with the nurses about Jack Boland in the church of today while they're strapping me down, literally, to have extensive surgery. And I think that is an absolute total miracle. I could not possibly have done it had I
Except
not
you
had
took these steps.
steps.
You saw that the fear was your enemy, not the cancer.
Exactly.
That the fear would kill you.
And I decided to enjoy it. I decided that in the midst of what I was going through, that something could happen to me that was different than what I might have anticipated otherwise, and it did happen. I had marvelous surgery.
What you decided on happened to you. When you decided that you were going to have a changed experience, it was changed all the way through, including enjoying going into the surgical room itself. Is that true?
That's true.
Now, because of all this joy, your healing took twice as long.
My healing was the most rapid that they have ever had in their history, significantly greater than whatever they've had at their very best. I was through surgery, through the post-op, and through the recovery in the hospital quicker than they've ever known anyone to go through in history. There was, surprisingly, almost no pain. The doctor had told me to expect excruciating, long-term pain, and I had almost none. It was the most amazing experience that I've ever had.
And your pain did not have to be controlled by drugs, did it?
I had no drugs after about the second day off the operating table. None at all.
Isn't that amazing? Thank you, Michael Smith.
Thanks, Jack. And thank each one of you.
For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power and love and of self-control, a sound mind. I remember once a few years ago, I was in Florida having dinner with some friends. I was giving a talk down there to a group of chiropractors. And there was a wife of one of the chiropractors who was there who did not know that she was an agoraphobic, filled with fear. And we talked about her fear. And one of her fears was public speaking. And you know, she's turned out to be one of the greatest public speakers that you've ever met in your life. And she just is eager to come dashing up on this platform and speak publicly. Barbara Dean. I looked over and saw her dressed like this a few minutes ago, and I said, are you an elf? And you said, what did you say?
My husband told me I look like Catwoman.
You look like an elf to me, Barbara Dean. Have you been afraid of anything lately?
Lately?
Lately? But
Yes.
besides public speaking. You're not afraid of that anymore. I mean, you're good at that.
No, not really. It
Okay.
doesn't.
Been
This
afraid
is
of
okay.
anything lately?
Yes.
Tell us about it and what you've done about it.
Which one, Jack?
The one that you want to share with us that
Well,
would have robbed you of your joy.
Christoph and I just opened a second chiropractic office 2 months ago, and it's in its startup stages. And the office that we have in one city is currently financing both clinics, and it's a little bit scary right now of what's happening financially. Yeah,
Has it been getting to you?
it has been getting to me.
How did you know it was getting to you? What caused you? I mean,
I was very.
there was a time in your life when you would not have been able to admit what you're acknowledging now because you wouldn't have seen it. You couldn't have admitted it. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
How did you know that it was getting to you?
I really did lose my joy. I started being cranky with my children.
Will fear cause you to be cranky with other people?
It does me. I don't know if it does anybody else.
Anybody
but-
else? If so, indicate.
Oh,
Does
a
fear
few.
change your
Just a few.
personality? Did
I-
fear change your personality, Kathy?
I just stopped being excited about stuff.
You lost your excitement.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? Fear will rob you of your excitement. Takes away your joy, your enthusiasm for life.
Yes, that's it.
It causes you to withdraw, doesn't it?
Yes.
Think dark thoughts. Yeah,
Yes.
just get further back like this, doesn't it?
Yes.
So you saw this, and what did you decide to do about it?
Well, I decided that I really had to stop being afraid because it wasn't helping anything at all. And with the support of my mastermind partners, I have been requesting for freedom from fear. All three of them here tonight, as a matter of fact, and they've been supporting me through this for about the past 8 weeks. In addition to that, I go to AA on Monday nights, and
Question. Now, with your mastermind partners, did you admit that you were afraid?
yes,
You did.
yes,
You admitted that you were personally powerless.
yes.
Came to believe that a power greater than yourself could restore you from your fear
Yes,
and turned your will and your life and the situation that you thought we were afraid of, which was the economic problem.
Whatever it is.
Whatever it is. Okay? Turned it over to God. And then you faced your fear itself. Okay? Now, recovery from fear. How many of you have ever been able to recover from fear by yourself? Not me. Have you ever been able to recover from fear by yourself? You become more afraid by yourself.
Yes. Panic attacks in the middle of the night. Yes.
So, if one wishes to recover from their fear, it's very important to join yourself to one or more other persons who are also seeking to be free of fear. Is that a reasonable statement? Is that why this group was formed? It is. Because we could believe for Michael things that Michael could not believe for himself. But because we believe them for him, he came to believe them for himself. Our belief system became his reality when he accepted it. Is that true? The belief system of the non-thinking radio and television news reporters and newscasters and newspaper writers, their non-thinking statements are becoming the reality of a recession in America that threatens to infect us all. Is that true? Except it's not going to infect me. You know why? It has nothing to do with me. If there's anybody here who's been afraid of the recession, raise your hand. Okay? If you're afraid of the recession, then the recession will strike you exactly to the level and in the measure and the kind of your fear. It becomes your recession because you are afraid of the recession. Then what you expect the recession to do to you, it will do to you because you are afraid of it. Suppose you decide that the recession is going to be good for you. That you're going to enjoy the recession, if there is one. That you're not going to be thinking about it, but if it is there, it will favor you. You think that's possible? You think that's reasonable? And that if you want to buy an automobile, you're going to go buy it sooner than you would have bought it anyhow, instead of later. Does that make sense? Not to fear, but does it make sense in the new reality? Does it? Of course it does. Let's decide for Barbara and for Christoph that the recession is the best thing that ever happened to their second business. Because, let me tell you why. All of these people who are afraid of the recession are going to get bent out of shape, and they're going to come limping into Christoph Dean's office to get straightened out. Is that a deal? That which I greatly fear has come upon me. But if I don't fear it, it cannot come upon me. If I enjoy it, meaning that it has no power over me. I must live in this world, but I must not be of the world, and the world is afraid. But God did not give you a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power and of joy and of a sound mind. How many of you have seen Dances with Wolves? All of you who have not seen Dances with Wolves, go see it. And I said it on Sunday, last Sunday, that if you go see it and don't like it, I'll pay you the price of the ticket. And I will do that. If you go and see Dances with Wolves and you don't like it, I will buy your ticket for you. Come to me and tell me. Now, if you go see it and like it, that means you're going to have to put $5.75 extra in the collection plate the following Sunday. Is that a deal? Is that a deal? You got to see it. The movie will change your life. I promise you that it will. But the reason that I'm reminded of this is that White Eagle is sitting here. White Eagle, come and join me on the platform. That movie was made on his reservation, on the Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota. Here's a fearless man. As of the last few minutes sitting there, right?
That's right.
Have you faced fear in your life, Mighty Eagle?
Yes, I have, Jack.
Give us a recent experience, just so that everybody will know that Native Americans are.
I have someone I love very much coming here tonight, and I have had great fear in facing that.
How could you be afraid of someone that you love coming? Well, none of us have ever had a fear like that. No.
We talked about it at dinner tonight.
We did.
And I said that I'm afraid of this. And that fear has gone now.
It has.
Yeah, completely. Absolutely, completely.
Why? Explain why it's gone. Because it did not leave of itself. Fear will never let you go. You must let it go. Fear will never let you go. Time will never cancel a fear. Will never erase it. You must let fear go. So something must have happened to you if the fear is gone. You think you could tell us what it is?
I think so.
Try.
While I've been sitting here, there has been so much joy around me and through me and from here and from all sorts of places that my expectation of what I know God is going to do, or what I don't know God is going to do, has been completely, the fear has been replaced by joy and expectation and excitement.
Excitement. You are anticipating with great excitement
You bet.
the possibilities, whatever they happen
Whatever
to be.
they happen to be.
Because your changed attitude means that whatever happened is going to work for the good of all concerned.
Exactly.
Is that true?
That's true. That's very true. And I like that.
And did you by any chance go through the steps that we were, as we went through them, the acknowledgement of the fear
Yes.
that you're facing,
Yes.
seeing it as the chameleon that it is,
Exactly.
and seeing that the fear was not of what might happen, but it was the fear that has always been in you anyhow.
Yes.
And so you're facing that fear.
Yeah.
And those of you who raised your little hands, remember, go through this. Admitted that you were personally powerless, came to believe that a power greater than yourself, that is fearless,
That is fearless.
it has no fear, will restore its spirit in you, which is also fearless, because its spirit is your spirit. Is that true?
That's very true. Yeah.
Okay. So you had something of that feeling. sitting
Yes.
there. And then you made your decision to turn your will and your life and this experience over to the care of the power that runs the universe.
You bet.
Knowing that the outcome of this encounter, when it comes, will be for the good of all concerned, that something wonderful will happen.
Exactly. There's no question in my mind about that.
Something good
Whatsoever.
always happens when we face our fear. Something serendipitous. Contained within every problem, contained within your problem, the one that has caused you to be afraid, is the seed of an equivalent or greater good. Your problem is nothing more than a miracle turned wrong side out. Every time in your life that you experience a miracle, it will come as the result of facing a problem fearlessly. Maybe not fearlessly at first, but stepping into that problem and getting the feeling of peace about it and the joy, the sense of harmony, molding with it. It's like David meeting Goliath, walking right into the experience itself, not holding back, but leaning into it, knowing that a power, David's case God, a power greater than ourselves, is in charge of Goliath or of the problem, and the fear is gone. And the something that always happens is that not only did David whip or destroy Goliath, and all that Goliath was David's own fear. Face the thing you fear, and the death of fear is certain, someone said. Face your Goliath, and your Goliath will die. But David was changed from a shepherd boy to the king as the result of facing his fear. You never would have heard of David had he not met his Goliath. You have met a Goliath or two in your life,
Yes, I have.
haven't you?
Yes.
And we know some things that we're not going to share with you. And isn't it wonderful? Would you trade your life for anyone's life?
No, I wouldn't, Jack. Not
Mike-
even for yours.
No, not. Hey, that's great. Michael, would you be without the experience of the last 3 weeks? As long as he lives, he will always be glad for what he has been through. Now, and this is what we said to you, this is what we agreed upon, that if one day you're going to be glad of this experience, then why not be glad about it today? Only one time in your life, Christoph, are you going to open a second office. The next will be the third office. So you may as well enjoy the second office. Let me make another point. You cannot go into any enterprise, into any relationship, into any experience without meeting with resistance, without having your expectations being brought down so that fear comes in. Is that a fact? Have you ever done it? It's always that way, isn't it? So, nothing ever turns out the way that we expect it to do, is what I just said. Did you ever do anything that turned out the way that you expected it to turn out? Never in your life have you. You never will. So why do you expect it to turn out the way you expect it to turn out? Why not expect it to turn out the way it's going to turn out, which is not the way you expected? You heard that, didn't you, Nancy? Okay. Now, having heard that and believed it, then why not enjoy whatever is happening in the experience? Enjoy it. It's the only time you're ever going to go through that. Michael, it's the only time you'll ever have that experience. It's the only time you're ever going to have the experience that's going to happen to you this weekend. It's the only time in your whole life you're ever going to have it. You'll have some others, maybe like it, but never this one. So why not enjoy them? Fear will rob you of your joy. Fear will keep you from remembering what happened. Fear will cause the experience to fail. Fear will cause the people to resist you and to not like you. But joy will create a miracle. Fear causes tragedies. Joy takes the same experiences and creates miracles. It is that simple. It is that simple. And Kathy, that's the way it really is.